Hello everybody, welcome. This is the core inside the blossom of a magnolia tree. There are many magnolias here. I think this botanical garden has one of the largest collections of them in the world. This is a bud that has not yet opened that contains that core. And there don't seem to be any open flowers at the moment. Let's take a look around a little bit in case there might be one. There's a lot of cores and there's a lot of buds. Oh, here's one flower. There we go. And you can see how something has collected here that's being dropped from above. These are trees that are very fragrant flowers. I think most of their pollinators are nocturnal, and for some reason that I don't know exactly why. Oh, here's the shape of the branch. You can see how the tree is very much its actual trunk is right here, and see how the branches they sort of go very horizontal. And for some reason I don't completely understand. I've heard that the magnolias like to be near camellias, and camellias I think are one of the trees that teas come from, particularly one of the teas I like, which is milk oolong. I think that comes from a camellia, but I'm not certain. It's been a while since I made a video. There's been a lot of turbulence in my life lately. This is a beautiful Cupressus macrocarpa, a Monterey cypress. I'm just going to show you the canopy here. Oh, that's really cool, huh? Yeah, there's been a lot of difficulty in my life and the lives of many of the people that I love. It seems to me that there are multiple situations going on, and the pandemic is sort of covering over them, even though it seems to be the kind of the most charismatic of the threats, the sort of the threat that's dancing on the stage, while all around behind the stage there are other threats. But one of the things I find strange is that many people who have not had COVID are suffering symptoms that resemble those that are associated with what we call long COVID. And in fact, I have experienced symptoms long before the pandemic that resemble those of long COVID. Which makes me very curious. Because I think there are multiple things going on and it's very difficult to differentiate them. I've spoken before about my sense that anthropologists may have misread ancient people's fear of eclipses and maybe even of floods by not understanding that there's an interior sun. The eclipse of the sky sun could certainly be terrifying and momentous, but the eclipse of the inner sun has an unknown duration, and that can destroy civilizations and bring terror and crisis to the human world. Yesterday it occurred to me that perhaps, along with the seemingly factual nature of the idea of severe tsunamis and flooding and such like this, which could easily have been caused by an impact from an extraterrestrial object, a comet, an asteroid, a meteor, or something else that we don't even know, we may not even have a name for. See, when terrible things happen in our lives, it's very difficult for us humans, being sort of childlike in our hearts and minds sometimes, to not presume that we have done something wrong, right? Because great misfortune, the sudden emergence of terrible misfortune, surely awakens in us the capacity to wonder if this is not some kind of retribution, right? Either for something we have done that is a terrible wrong, or possibly also something we have not done that was very important to do. And so I suspect that historically, of course, it may well be, right, that there's some kind of an angry God thing in the universe, or various kinds of God things. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because the way that consciousness is organized in sort of tiers, right? Like a tree-like form. This is a great tree right here. And so, you know, there's layers, there's levels, there's stations of integration, and those stations of integration become identities, become beings, become minds, hearts. So it wouldn't surprise me to discover that in fact there were something like gods. And there's all kinds of different things they might be. Ordinarily, when we wonder, well, what does this term refer to? What is meant if we read this term, or if we interpret a reading of this term from ancient peoples or records or, you know, inscriptions, statues, and so on? What is meant? And part of the problem with trying to pursue this is that there's a bias in us moderns, and perhaps it's natural to any people in any time, to suspect that ancient peoples lived in thought and had the same kinds of experiences we have. This may well not be true. This could be surprisingly untrue. I mean, the degree of untruth could be very surprising. And it's not actually reasonable to assume, though it's okay to suppose, that in the past everything was as it is now. Minds were just like our minds. Hearts were just like our hearts. That stellar jay is trying to store the peanut in its craw. And this raven's a little more skeptical. I do not presume, though I may sometimes suppose, but I do not presume that a human being 1,000 years ago, or 8,000 years ago, or 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 years ago, had the same essential kind of experience and mind that I have, because I know I've had experiences of mind that are nothing like what moderns would understand or expect. In fact, some of these experiences were so shocking that they might actually kill a modern human being. Just if they had a few moments of this experience, they might die, right? And so I don't suppose that the minds of human beings or the experiences of human beings throughout history were the same as they are today, or even closely resembled, or however you want to say it. But I know, from everything I've learned and come to understand, both through my experience and my reading and research, that there were terrible catastrophes for ancient peoples, and some of them were certainly non-ordinary. I believe that the array of problems we presently find ourselves enmeshed in on a planetary scale are not entirely ordinary by any stretch of the imagination. There's profound non-ordinary aspects to them. They are inexplicable. They cannot be encompassed or explained by rational descriptions, models, theories, etc. Excuse me for a moment. Water. A long time ago, my friend Mark brought his son to my house. His son was 7. I asked his son, if you had a free wish and you could wish for anything, what would you wish for? Of course, Mark's ancestors and his son's ancestors come from Africa, and I think his son is actually in Africa right now, which I find kind of a frightening idea. But I asked his son, if you could have anything you wanted, what would you wish for? And he said something very surprising. He said, I would wish for water. Because water will keep you alive. It's very uncommon to hear a small child, well, he was not that small, he was 7, but to hear a child say something that deep and profound and wise, and unencumbered by confused ephemera. In space, time, liquid water appears to be extremely rare, and this planet is rife with it. It's everywhere here. And that makes this place an extremely rare paradise that can support such astonishing forms of life as these. And these, lavender. Some kind of artemisia that looks sage-like. More lavender. More artemisias. Grasses. This world, from what I have, from the intimations I have gleaned, this is a rare and paradisical world in time-space, and there are few like it. Of course, what we mean by few depends on the sample size. If you sample 1 billion worlds and you find 5 like this, that's rare. If you sample 1 trillion worlds and you find two like this, it's even more rare. About 66 geese. And a few young ravens. White cheek people. And powerful and intelligent animals. So there were disasters historically, and also ecstasies. Like, I'm not sure what the opposite of a disaster is, but opportunities and sudden ascension moments in the history of life on Earth and of our own species that are very mysterious and not necessarily match our ideas of them at all. When we think of an eclipse, wow, that's a sight. That's beautiful. There are apparently thousands of tablets from Babylon talking apparently about the disappearance of the gods, and now demons are everywhere. And of course, for us moderns, I don't think we understand what is meant by these two words. Gods and demons. And many people would presume that these are just, kind of superstitious or religious ideas and terms. I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. There are states of mind in which the divine beings are so tangible, so present to consciousness, that our own consciousness cannot exist without them. And they are not thoughts or ideas any more than your neighbor is a thought, any more than the sound of my voice is a thought, or the image of my face. No, long ago, things were probably extremely different from what we experience today. And in fact, what I'd like you to imagine is a world populated with non-ordinary beings to the same degree our world has become populated with objects, machines, and artificial processes. You see the cars everywhere, yeah? You see the phones and the houses and all these things, they're everywhere. But long ago, before that was true, other forms held those positions in the relational web of beings. And for most of us moderns, these are matters either of great mystery or of ideology, right? Like, we are inclined to think that religion is essentially a form of superstition, a narrative thing. And that's not precise. It's not very confusing that we have this problem, because very few of us have had any experience of anything other than narratives about non-ordinary reality. And actually what I mean by non-ordinary reality is something kind of paradoxical or conflicted, because I mean ordinary reality stripped of the blinding ideas, concepts, experiences, contexts that deprive us of the experience that I point at when I use this term non-ordinary. In every living place, there are two kinds of things. There are the spirits of these beings, the souls of these beings, these trees, these grasses, these birds. I think these are linden trees. Oh, that one's starting to bloom. But there are also spirits of place, and the language is touchy, right? Because if I use this word spirit or something like this, or if I say the soul, people are going to get ideas. But what I mean are beings that don't have bodies, but are there. You can contact them, they will communicate with you. Under the right conditions, they will teach you, guide you, harm you, fight you, redirect you. And it's not imaginary any more than any of our existence is imaginary. But what I mean by imaginary, it's not an invention of thought, right? It's actually here. It's just that we've been so deprived of our array of senses that we ordinarily do not sense them. And so when I say non-ordinary, what I mean is what we would sense if our actually ordinary senses, the full array of them, were available to us. We would have a staggering experience of something that doesn't resemble anything like our ideas about nearly anything. Even the exotic ideas they can't hold a candle to what's actually going on. This is in part because ideas are derivations, and what's going on is not a derivation. Now, I can't always feel or see the beings. And the degree to which the aperture of my sensing opens is determinative of what I may be able to sense, contact, become aware of, communicate with, and so on. Most of the time, I'm much like any other person, any random person on the street. I don't feel the world. I don't feel the non-ordinary layer, or I feel it only very slightly. There are various things I can do to change that. One of them is focus my attention on one thing, like one tree, one animal, one aspect of the living place, slow down, stop thinking, come into my body, release my the sort of flotilla of thoughts, ideas, and concepts that ordinarily occlude the world of participation in relation, in nature. Because you see, part of the problem is that an aspect of our bicameral minds, and they're probably not merely bicameral, but this associated with the left hemisphere is the idea of grasping and parts and cutting things into pieces, distinguishing and so on. And that inguish is the same kind of sound of that comes from extinguish, right? To put out, to put an end to. Yeah? Distinguishing puts an end to the senses that depend on unity, right? And the left hemisphere's preference is very knife-like. It wants to cut things into parts and manipulate those parts. It's very grasping oriented. And once the left hemisphere's faculties grasp the knife of distinguishing, the mind turns into a knife. And it cuts things, and it reifies the parts that it thusly distinguishes, and we become trapped in this really dangerous process, which is also useful. Unfortunately, it's so dominant that its usefulness is easily overcome by the perils that emerge from its inactions. So I usually don't sense in a deep way the spirits of place that I know are there from previous experience when I could. And some of those experiences were so rich and deep that they pretty much obliterated everything I had thought about what's going on. Everything. What a tree is, what it means to be alive, what the sun is, what time is, what light is. All of these things were destroyed and remade during some of the experiences that I've had. And these experiences did not involve the use of psychedelic drugs or other drugs. They involved contact with something that certainly could qualify as a god, or perhaps a demon, or perhaps an angel. Or possibly a collective of intelligences of some kind that appear via a sort of, what's the right word? An intermediary form. Something like this. Ah, it's beautiful here. That water in the sky is life. That water. I mean, our eyes, right? They have water. Our mouths water. We are water animals. Water beings. Now, I didn't begin this afternoon with any particular goal, and I've wandered around a few various topics, but the thing that came out and that I have been concerned about and have been thinking about writing about but haven't taken hand to keypad over yet, there's a layered array of disasters happening for the humans all over the planet right now. And I believe that cascade will gain momentum and will breed new and diverse forms over the coming few decades. Some of those will happen very quickly. Others will take longer to happen. Unfortunately, in the moment of our trial, we may find ourselves bereft of the intelligences and sensitivities most crucial to navigating such terrain for a wide variety of reasons, but for one that's hard to pinpoint the cause of. There appears to be, I have some theories about cause. For one thing, you can't rip the ecologies apart and have human minds remain coherent. Human minds are an expression, even an extension, of the incredible diversity of life on Earth and the ecologies. So as those get burnt down, we're going to get dumber. Fast, too. Really fast. And each of us will be affected or not affected, and affected and unaffected in unique ways, because there are very few situations that affect everyone the same. Each of us is uniquely embodied, uniquely temporalized. We are time beings, and it's almost as if each being and each being that composes each being, like each of my cells, is a unique bubble of time in a temporal hyperstructure, a biorelational hyperstructure. And so effects reach each beings at different times, in the same way that the people at the beach are destroyed by the tidal wave immediately. The people inland, it takes a little longer. The people far inland will experience repercussions of the tidal wave. It may not be destroyed by it, and so on. So I think a lot of trouble is coming. And some of it is certainly the repercussion of the actions of our collectives, and in some ways the individuals that compose them, but not to the same degree, because the individuals don't really have the capacity to generate harm at the scale that our collectives have been engaged in. So in the time of greatest crisis and trouble, we may be deprived of the very assets we need to understand and navigate it. And it's possible that we could assemble them together, because I think what we're going to find is that collective human intelligence is going to become a high priority in the future. We're going to need to be able to generate intelligent collectives, to produce and nurture them and protect them, even if the scale is small, even if it's 10 people or something. It's absolutely crucial that our species step out of the historical idiocy of empires and nations into new forms of human communality and intelligence. And we are well prepared for this evolutionarily, but we are poorly prepared for it situationally so far. I have some ideas about what we might do. Perhaps someday I'll get to pursue them if my mind survives this mess, and I find a few allies. Perhaps not, I don't know. But it's my hope that we will be able to do this, and of course with the people that I am close with, I'm always reaching for, let us learn to see better and more deeply together, and to grow and to protect each other and nurture each other, love each other, lift each other up, out of the blindness and confusion that is our ordinary experience of modernity. So this is a bit of an abrupted video, but it's been so long since I made one that I wanted to just take a few moments this evening and speak with you all about these things. I have many other notions on my mind, but Perhaps they must wait for another day. That is the great entrance cypress. What an incredible being that is. Probably at least 100 years old. Maybe we should do the canopy. Walk around the canopy with this tree. What an astonishing tree. I love this tree so much. I mean, I fall in love with trees at the drop of a hat. I don't actually know where that phrase comes from. And this tree has a beehive in it. It's right in that crack right there. You might be able to see a few bees in there, maybe. But yeah, let's do the canopy thing. I'm gonna go all the way around the tree. It's awesome. All right, you beautiful souls. May you be lifted from anything that binds you and freed from that which traps you, and safe from that which harms you. Encouraged, reassured, loved. May you know the fulfillment of the promise of your human birth. May you naturally embody the virtues. Much love. Bye-bye for now.